Hi, it's Jared from Strong Roots Farm. Today we're finally going to talk about pastures. Grasses, what we did for cover cropping, some of the things that we have, where we started, how long we've been doing this, and where we plan to go. That's all coming up next.
I'm Jared McGinnis, and this is a story of my family and our farm. About a year ago, we purchased a small rundown farm and began working to transform it into a local, sustainable food source for our community. Please subscribe and come with us on this journey of faith, family, and healthy food. We are Strong Roots Farm.
Out in our pasture, finally going to talk about it. Just to give you some background on where we're at. This is April 2017. Come June of 2017, we'll have been at this property 2 years. We seeded this pasture in October, early October, mid-October of 2016, or 2015, sorry. So 2015, we bought the farm in June. We logged it immediately. There was a bunch of trees, there was a bunch of stuff down. The pastures were really grown over, lots of weeds. There was lots of bad fencing, so the whole place needed fenced. So there was a lot of work to do before we could actually get cows here. And so from June until October, what we worked on was clearing out all the fence, dozer work. I put a road down to the creek. We logged, so there was lots of ruts from the logging, lots of cleanup, lots of burning of stuff. All that kind of stuff went on from June to October. Come October, I had all this stuff bush hogged down, lots of thistle, lots of weeds, some overgrown saplings even out here in this pasture. So we cleared everything out and I plowed it under. I don't know that I would do that. I don't know that I would recommend that to somebody else today if you're going to start a new pasture, but that's what I chose to do. There was a lot of bad watershed issues, so we land leveled everything. So I dissed it really well, land leveled it, put in ditches, and I seeded down my pasture mix. When I went to the local farm supply store, they recommended this cattle mix, had 90% Timothy. Okay, so Timothy, nice grass, but it needs a lot of nitrogen. There's not a lot of fixing of nitrogen there, and it needs a lot of nitrogen, and it tends to grow weeds. It doesn't cover as well. So it needs some chemicals as well in the future. Most people that I know that grow straight Timothy hay, they have to put fertilizer down every year, and every 5 years they're either tilling it under or spraying it and starting over. We didn't want to do that, so I went with an equine mix. That's what the bag said on it. What it basically boiled down to is it had some clover in it, had a lot of orchard grass. It was still about 25% Timothy, I think, but there were like 12 or 15 different varieties of grasses in this pasture mix that I bought. Okay, I was a starting farmer. I had never done a pasture before. I had never raised cattle before. So that's what I went with, and that's where we started at, and this is where we're at today. So in 2016, come April, May of 2016, it had been planted 6 months. I baled it, about 3/4 of the property, and I started grazing the other quarter. As it grew and we got towards the summer slump, I was steadily grazing, doing my daily paddock moves. You can watch all this in prior videos. We grazed this property, so we baled this property once, and I grazed it 3 times last year in 2016. Then in the fall, I did some cover cropping, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I know some people were interested in that. Let's go into where I cover cropped and where I didn't and why. All right, so where I cover cropped. So my property line over here, you can see the fence and the tree line. You can also see the poly stakes as they kind of go back this line. There's about 100 feet, 150 feet from this fence line to these poly stakes, straight all the way back to the very back of the property. Also, there's this little paddock up here up front, which is another 150 foot wide and probably 100 yards, 350 feet long. This little square paddock up front. That's what I chose to cover crop. The thought was if I could cover crop in October, that this paddock that was close to the house up here, I could graze it right now. So that's what I plan to do here in February and March. I wanted to be able to bring them cows out. I wanted to be this cattle farmer that didn't own a baler, and that's what we're still working towards. But that was the plan, to kind of graze this. So how I did was I moved the cows through this paddock in October. I got a little bit behind schedule because I was waiting on somebody else. We were renting a drill together, and we really, we kind of both tried this out for the first time. And we waited really too long in October. Even though we had a very good November here in Ohio, this really needs to be done in August, September-ish, if you can do it then, to get this March grazing. So I moved the cows through the paddocks. Then after 7 days, I seeded it. And then after 7 days, I brought the cows all back through it real hard. And then I bush hogged it tight. so that could allow the cover crop to come up through. It did. So I planted, what did we cover crop? We did purple top turnips, we did hairy vetch, we did rye and crimson clover mix, which was about 25% crimson clover. We did another clover in this mix as well, and some other grass. What other grass did I do? Some other grass I had in there, some orchard grass. So we put all that in, we mixed it all in, and the thought was I already had some orchard grasses, I already had a little bit of fescue, very little, but some. I already had some white clover and some red clover out here. And so we wanted to mix it up. I wanted to have as many species as I could out here, some plantain, and so we put that cover crop in. You can see how dark green this grass is. So, most people say, man, your pastures look so green, they're tall, they're growing up nice. The problem with that is if I bring cows out right now, there's so much green here, they'll start having diarrhea, and they'll look like me if I went to White Castle, and then we won't be gaining any weight, okay? So the cows won't be gaining weight, they'll have diarrhea everywhere. So this is a good job. I like what happened here. I like the cover crop. I like how it's coming in. We started a little late, but we're gonna get good April and May grazing off of this. The cows, I have 3 round bales left. I bought a few, and just to kind of extend my season a little bit, we've had a really weird March and April weather, a lot of rain. So instead of tearing up my pasture, I said, let's just let the pasture grow a little bit longer, put the cows out in it. Let's go look where I didn't cover crop. Probably 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of brown. So as much brown as there was green. This is where I plan on grazing first as I bring cows out, so that to kind of get them used to the new fresh grass. So as you go through this pasture, what I notice is it's kind of blotchy. So we did a good job of spreading the manure with chickens. We did a good job of rotational grazing. Grass is coming in good. This looks as good, if not better, than some of the pastures I'm seeing of my friends, but it doesn't have the stand. It's not as thick as where I cover cropped. So it doesn't have that 7-8 inch growth solid all through. You've got some spots that are 7-8 inches and some spots are 2 inches. It's just not as thick, and there's not as much here for them to graze on. This spot here got baled once and grazed twice in 2016 on the first year hay. Still good production for our first year hay, but it did not get the rotational grazing it needed, and it did not get any cover cropping, because this is where I was grazing while I was cover cropping. Pastures in the far back. So way back on the other side of this tree line, and then back here in this corner of the farm, there's another pasture. Those pastures were the last 2 pastures I grazed last year. They got grazed 3 times last year, but there's a lot of brown there. By the time we got to them, there was a pretty heavy stance of grass in the late fall, and my water started freezing on my cart. So we busted it through there, went through real quick, and we left quite a bit. So there's a really good mix of browns and greens back there. I'm really happy with that back there. It's coming in thick, but there's just not that solid stance that I have where I cover cropped, okay? So the overall benefit of it, I'm seeing a benefit to there's less weeds where I cover cropped than there is over back there, but there's less browns. So if you're looking at that mix of where you put your cows on first, I'm gonna choose back there where it's got some browns in it, and in this spot right here that we're standing in. I now have 12 to 13, closer to 13 acres of pasture. When I bring these calves out of the paddock here with their last hay, I'll have 13 head. 11 head. 3 of those head will be 5 weights, so between 550s in there, and then 8 of those head will be in that 700 to 800 pound range. So really, if you're looking at a cow-calf pairing, I'm not that heavy because the calves aren't there the cows aren't there at that 1,000 pound weight. If you're counting cow days like Salatin does, we're really about seven head, okay, on 12 to 13 acres on 1,000 pound head rate, okay? So we will be able to bale some of this year. My goal is to get to that 1 acre per cow, 1 acre per 1,000 pound, wherever you're at there. And here in Ohio, I see us having huge boost of growth here in the spring as we go through this spring upturn, okay? We will bale, and we will bale some of it, not all of it. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bale this hairy vetch and all this clover and all this stuff that has lots of protein in it and store some of that, square bale it up. And then what I'll do is I'll bring them back through as partly a second cut if you're producing hay. So we will, through the summer slump, be okay on this 12 to 13 acres. We'll keep bringing them through. During the summer slump though, those brown pastures in the back, I'm going to try a summer cover crop. I'm going to add a mix in, and it's going to be a little more nitrogen supporting and a little more nitrogen storage. So I'm adding tillage radishes, purple top turnips for my storage. I'm adding hairy vetch. I'm adding cowpeas to add that legume, to add that nitrogen in, to add something high protein for the cows. The crimson clover and rye, that'll come back again. All that stuff, I'm going to try it in the summer, and then I'm also going to do more ground, probably what I didn't do last year. I'm going to do more ground in some of our plans for cover cropping, and that's how we're going to use it to diversify. So we're adding that plantain in as well. We want to add some more of that in. The chicory, we're adding that in. We want to add some more of that in our pastures. So we're looking to have 12, 15 different varieties of grasses really close together, and maybe 20 spread out over through the pastures. But we want to have a wide variety of crops, wide variety of grasses, wide variety of turnips and nitrogen storage, whatever we can have out through our pasture. The more diversity we have, the better our cows are going to be, the better our ground's going to be, the better the microbiology in the ground's going to be. So that's what we want to do, and that's what we're looking to do. On our paddock, so we have this paddock up here that we do our winter calves in. We put our winter cows in there. So we will be buying hay. I've sourced a few farmers that are not spraying their hay. That's kind of important to us and our customers. So things that they're doing, their hay looks good, and they have more than their cattle eat. So I'm going to be buying some hay from them, and I'll be baling some here as well. But in our paddock here, we're doing something special that we've talked about a little bit with the market garden, where the corn will be in there, potatoes will be in there, and we'll put hairy vetch in it. And then I'm going to let the cattle come through on the old sweet corn stalks and the hairy vetch, and then I'll cover crop that thing. I want that thing 4 foot tall by the time they come in for the winter. Let them graze that, and also have a good root base for them to stand on, and then we'll feed on that next winter. So what are some recommendations for you? Is first, look at what you need. Look at what you're needing for your crops, what you're needing for your animals. So what does your land need? So for instance, if you need phosphorus, I would choose buckwheat. You can put it in late in the fall. It'll winter die off. It pulls up phosphorus really well. It has a deep taproot. So you can research plants like that. Even though I'll never graze it, even though it'll do nothing but add biological area to my soil and increase that kind of stuff, and I'm not going to graze it. It's not a profitable grazing crop, but it will help my phosphorus. It will help my ground. It's all about the soil, thinking about what's going to happen with my soil and how it's going to affect my pasture. So as I learn this stuff, and as you guys are helping me out, and as we're doing different things here and trying different things, that's what we're looking to do, is improve the soil quality. That's why we're adding chickens. That's why the chickens go behind the cows and spread out the manure. That's why they drop their nitrogen. We're looking for all that as well. Diversity in animals, diversity in crops, help that soil out. So no fertilizer. We're not putting any synthetic fertilizers down, no sprays, no chemicals down. All we're doing is rotating these animals across it, mob grazing, moving them the best we can, paying attention to what the land is telling us, and going from there. It's doing your research, okay? So the guy at the feed store is there to sell his seed. The guy at the chemical company is there to sell his chemicals. The guy who raises grass-fed beef like me is here to sell his grass-fed beef and talk to people about it. So everybody who's telling you something and giving you information, where does the money go to and where does the money come from? That'll pretty much tell you what the information's coming from. So do your research and see what's best for you. Not what's best for me, not what's best for that seed salesman or that chemical salesman. Do your research and figure out what's going on. Do your soil tests. Test stuff out. Don't be afraid to screw up. Okay, so I did not have the cover crop that I expected to have, but I did get some stuff going in my soil. I am testing stuff. My ground is not as good as it can be. I do have growth to go, and I'm testing those things. I'm not afraid to make mistakes and try something new.
As always, thanks for watching. Tell your mama and them. Subscribe and comment to continue with us on this journey. And don't forget to check out Noah Smith at noahsmithmusic.com.